Today we're with David Shapiro. David Shapiro is a criminal defense attorney located in San Diego, California. He's agreed to answer a number of questions that were posted online. Today's questions were specifically related to sexual crimes. This is something he does defend, has quite a bit extensive experience with it, actually. If you were one of the people who posted these questions, you're going to have your answer just right away. For the rest of you, if you're looking at this and have been accused of a crime sexual in nature, obviously feel free to reach out to David directly. He's also agreed that if you post some of the questions below this video on YouTube, that he's going to actually get back to those questions in real time, or as soon as he can, follow up with you. With that said, David, I'm going to go ahead and go to the first question we had posted on the internet. That question was, is it possible to have a sexual assault expunged from my record?
Okay, that's a pretty good question, and that's a question that I face pretty frequently from clients who will call, potential clients who will call regarding prior convictions. And the answer to that is, the infamous lawyer answer in that it depends. It depends on the specific offense that you were ultimately convicted of. The general rule as it relates to expungements under Penal Code Section 1203.4 in California is that you must have successfully completed probation. That's usually the first hurdle. What that means is if you were convicted of a sex crimes offense and you ultimately got sent to prison, that would preclude you from being eligible for that relief. So the first step is you have to have avoided prison on the front end of your case. On the back end, you would have had to have successfully completed probation. And then the it depends comes in based on what exact offense you were convicted of. There's some offenses that you were precluded from seeking that relief even if you successfully completed probation. So a lot of it depends. It's definitely a good idea always to contact an attorney and see if your case is available, counts for one of those that could be entitled to that relief.
Okay, all right, well, makes total sense. Next question we've got posted was, and this is a pretty general one, I guess, but how much does it cost to defend a sexual molestation case?
That's another question I get a lot without many more details attached to it, for better or worse. Each attorney is going to charge different. I think what's important when evaluating what an attorney charges is it corresponding to their experience in these types of cases. My experience has been with a lot of attorneys that will charge, just a couple of $1,000s maybe on a serious felony sexual assault case. And I look at that one of two ways. Either one, they are desperate for the business, that is usually a reason for that, or they are too inexperienced or not experienced enough to understand the amount of time, the amount of effort, the amount of options there are out there when defending a sexual assault allegation. So generally speaking, anywhere from a couple of $1,000s all the way to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, depending on the case, depending on the number of alleged victims, depending where the case is located, depending on the state of the evidence. There's so many factors that go into it. I think it's important to evaluate the attorney's experience and to not necessarily be drawn away from the attorney who charges the most and not necessarily be attracted to the attorney who charges the least. Particularly with sexual assault cases, there are so many factors that go into what's a fair and appropriate fee for an attorney to charge. And I think it's appropriate that the attorney that you are in a sexual assault case, the attorney you decide to hire, that attorney have the understanding of what exactly is the case, how invested that attorney needs to be in that case, and how the length of time needs to go on and on and on, if that's an investment in the client. So that's another very general question, and I hope it answered it.
Okay, I understand. And another question we had here, let's see, this person was I am a registered sex offender, but low risk. How can I get removed off the list?
Okay, I'm assuming when you talk about the list, you're referring.
I believe he's referring to the sexual offender list.
Okay, well, there's a couple of variations. There's certain offenses in California that you are convicted of certain offenses. It is mandatory that you register as a sex offender for the rest of your life. There is no register for a couple of years or for 5 years or 10 years. I think it's the first line of Penal Code Section 290 says, any persons convicted of these offenses shall register for life. So if they're talking about general 290 registration list, so to speak, there are a couple of options, and again, that will depend on the offense. There are some options where you could seek expungement. If that's an option, that necessarily doesn't get you off of your 290 registration obligations. But what that does do, that's a step in the process for possibly filing for a certificate of rehabilitation. The other issue is when people say the list, they can refer to the Megan's Law website. And there are some offenses that, although they require 290 registration for life, do not qualify for the Megan's Law website. So a lot of it will depend not necessarily on what level, low risk or otherwise, of probation or parole that you're on, but it will depend more on the underlying offense, specifically what penal code section you were convicted of.
Okay. All right. And this was the last question we had here. And it's, does an employer have the right to fire me based off of a sexual-related crime?
In California, California is an employable state, meaning that it's at-will employment. So basically, they can fire you if they don't like the way you look, if they don't like the way you perform and work. You know, California being at will means they can fire you for any reason. They might not be foolish enough to agree. We're going to tell you why, if it relates to a situation where you have a prior sexual offense, assault on your record. But the biggest issue, remember, I'm not an employment attorney, I'm a criminal defense attorney, but the biggest issue that my clients face a lot of times is, hey, I know this person fired for this offense or because of this conviction. You know, my response is, well, consult with an employment attorney, but good luck trying to prove that because it is an at-will state. Other states need a reason, and sometimes the only reason would be criminal history.
Okay. All right. Well, David, thanks for your time. To the people who submitted your questions, we appreciate it. Obviously, you can reach out to David at any time. If you're watching this and have some questions as well, just feel free to post them just below in the YouTube video. And again, David, appreciate you taking the time to answer the questions.
No problem. My pleasure.